My name is Ernie Harker. I'm currently the Executive Director of Marketing for Maverick, and what that means is it's my job to turn a convenience store into a lifestyle brand, a cool brand. Kind of a tricky job, to be honest with you. Let me give you some background on where I started, where I kind of came from. I've always been interested in art, even as a little kid. I was interested in illustration, so I'd be drawing quite a bit. And I took classes in junior high and high school that would help me advance my skill and capabilities in illustration. In fact, when I was 11 or 12 years old, my parents threw away our TV. They actually just put it in the garage. And for about 1 or 2 years, we didn't have a TV in the house, and so I used that time to help me hone my illustration skills, and so I became very, very proficient at illustration. When I was in high school, I designed pins and keychains for a company called Parks International, and it was my first professional illustration design type of a job, and I found I really enjoyed it. I also started a small company called Tomorrow. It was a graphic t-shirt design company. I would illustrate and design some artwork that I would put on t-shirts, and then I'd take them to retailers, convenience stores, small shops, whatever, to see if they would be willing to sell my t-shirts. Now I was pretty naive at the time, and looking back, I'm surprised any of those companies even let me put my inventory in their store. It was just a hobby to make a little extra money to pay for art supplies for school and food and things like that. So after high school, I went to the University of Utah and studied a little bit there. And then I served a mission in Ireland, an LDS mission in Ireland. And then I came back and went to school at Utah State University. And it was there that I really began to focus and hone my illustration skills to be more on a professional level. To make a little extra money, I worked for a company called the Kenshin Corporation. I was designing socks, the graphics that would go on the side of socks, and I was limited to a certain number of colors I could use. And I would get a stack of papers, and they would have an outline of a sock on them. And then I would go back to my apartment, and then I would sketch out sock ideas. It wouldn't take me very long to do each one of these different sock ideas, and I would take them back to the office, the Kenshin office, and they would go through these stacks of illustrations and go, yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, no, yes, yes, and they'd give me like $10 or $20 for every sock design that they wanted to keep. Then I worked for a couple years for a sign company. I would make these huge signs for car dealerships most often, and it'd be like for sale or some kind of board closeout. And these signs would have letters 2 to 3 feet tall, and I would be holding a can of red or black lacquer paint with this paintbrush. I'd be sniffing this awful paint and painting these huge letters. But it got me in the habit of working in really, really large formats, because typically I would use a small sketchbook and draw things on a piece of paper that's about this big. And so it got me comfortable working in a very large format. Then I fell in love with a girl from Provo and moved to Provo and got a job working for a t-shirt company called Handsome Prints. And really my job was to illustrate and prepare for printing artwork that customers would want to have on their t-shirts. Family reunion t-shirts, high school t-shirts, any kind of organization. And I would do the illustrations or artwork and then prepare that artwork for screen printing. It was there that I learned more about digital art software like Photoshop and Illustrator. Then I got asked to work for a company called Dolan Smith White. It was an advertising agency, and I started there as a storyboard illustrator. I would draw out the frames like a comic strip. I would draw out these little frames, and then in those frames I would show the sequence of events that would happen in a television commercial. And I would draw hundreds of these storyboard frames. Very few of them were actually ever presented to the client, because the art director and the writer would kind of go through their concepts after they had been sketched out and determine which ones had legs, which ones were more promising than others. And so they would stand by my desk and throw away the storyboards that didn't make the cut. While I was working for Dawn Smith White, I saw other artists brought in from Los Angeles who would charge $300 to $500 a day doing the exact same things I was doing. And so I realized at that point in time that there was probably an opportunity for me to make more money and have more freedom working for myself. And it culminated, this decision to leave and start my own company culminated in 1995, when I was asked to delay a family vacation that I'd been planning for a couple of years to stay and work on a project, an important project for the company. I decided to go on the vacation, and I realized that I wanted to have more freedom, more latitude in my time. And so when I came back from my vacation, I gave my 2 weeks notice and then started a company called Burn Communications that eventually evolved to 8 Fish. And so I started a company in 1995 and kept that company moving for 15 years. 8 Fish produced illustration, animation, design. We did brochures, we did TV commercials, we did radio commercials, just a whole slew of different creative production projects. While working at 8 Fish, I also produced 2 more self-published projects. One was Extreme Tourist. It was a TV series of me basically going on vacation in different parts of the world doing really fun things, like instead of just sitting on the beach, I went, stand-up paddleboarding, kayaking, learning to surf, rappelling, hang gliding, and just really fun, active adventure things. I also produced a line of LDS-themed family home evening DVDs called FHE on DVD to help busy families have family home evenings. So I've always been driven to do my own things. I can't tell you why, I can't tell you what that is that makes me want to be entrepreneurial, other than the fact that I want to have control over my own time. I want to be able to earn an income that is not limited by what somebody else thinks that I'm valued at. I think being an entrepreneur also allows me to explore the different types of projects that I'm interested in. I can find a client or develop a project that I feel is something that I've always wanted to do, like animation. It was really challenging for me to find a client who needed animation, and so I just decided to do my own animation projects with FHE on DVD. Being entrepreneurial is also part of my personal brand. I feel like I'm very creative. I feel that I am not limited by what resources I currently have available. Part of my personal brand is a get-it-done attitude, a personality that basically says, I have the will, I know there's a way for me to get something done. And another mantra I have is there's 24 hours in a day, and oftentimes I would use every one of those 24 hours to get a project done to make my client feel like they were the most important person at the time. Part of my personal brand is to say yes all the time, very positive, very optimistic. And so I would tell clients that yes, I can get that project done, and I would sometimes use every hour in the 24-hour day to make sure a project gets done, so that customers could count on me for any projects that would come up. And I remember being told by multiple clients that I was the first person they came to because they knew that I would say yes and that I would get it done, even though the timeline was practically impossible. So I'm optimistic, I'm happy, I'm friendly. That is something that's consistently experienced through all my clients and employees. Even though that there are times when things can be really challenging, and very frustrating. I choose to be very optimistic, very positive, highly energetic, so that the experience of working with me is one that ends up being positive.